Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So, today this is the third and final part of our series on implementing continuous integration for our Django application. In part 1, we retrieved the code from GitHub, installed the Django application on the EC2 instance, and ensured that it was running smoothly. In part 2, we dockerized our Django application and ran it as a container. Today, in part 3, we'll be implementing Jenkins for continuous integration. Jenkins will retrieve the code from the GitHub, build it, and deploy it on our to our Dockerized application. So we'll also be looking at the push strategy, which means that whenever a developer pushes new code to GitHub, Jenkins will automatically pull the latest code, build it, and deploy it in our application. So by implementing this continuous integration process, we'll be able to automate the build and deployment process. Also, you can showcase this project on your resume as a DevOps engineer, and this particular automation will also reduce the possibility of errors and increase the speed of our software delivery pipeline. So let's get started and implement continuous integration for our Django application with Jenkins. And thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exciting content. So let's get started with hands-on. So we'll go to our AWS console. We'll go to our EC2 instance. So you can create an EC2 instance. You can check out my other videos where I have already created EC2 instance. You can look into that video. You can look into part 2 itself. So I have this instance running over here. So I'll click on connect and connect to this particular instance. Click on this connect button, and once you are connected, what you can do next is we can start looking into the installation of Jenkins and then GitHub. And for that, you can refer to my GitHub repository link, which I have already shared, and I'll also leave it in the description box. So it will hardly take 5 minutes to install Jenkins. So for those who are new to this channel and those who don't know that we are working on this DevOps series where we are going to implement continuous integration, so for them, I'm installing Jenkins. Otherwise, you can refer to my previous videos also if you are not sure how do you install Jenkins. Today, we are going to do it really quick, and then we are going to look how you can integrate your GitHub with Jenkins and how you can deploy your application, a Dockerized application, with the help of continuous integration automation process. Okay, so let's get started. So let's quickly install Jenkins and Git on our EC2 instance. So let's start with Git first. So let's say sudo yum install. So we'll install Git in our local. Say yes. Okay. So this is installing Git, and Git has been installed in our local. So the next thing is we are going to install Jenkins. And for Jenkins, this is the GitHub repository which you can refer. So let's take the steps or commands from that repository and run it on our EC2 instance. We'll try to do it quickly so that we can get into the actual continuous integration process that we are going to look today. So we'll copy the commands. I have explained the commands, what does these command actually means in my previous videos. So you can refer to those videos in order to understand in detail what is happening here. So we are just basically installing Jenkins. So we imported a key file for Jenkins CI. Next, we have to install Java as well. So Java is something that is required when you are installing Jenkins. So we are going to copy this command in order to install Java on our EC2 machine. And once it is being installed, we are going to install Jenkins and we are going to start the Jenkins server. So Java is still stalling on our EC2 instance. So let's look into the next command. So next command, it says the fifth step is we need to install Jenkins. So let's see if Java is installed. So Java is installed on our EC2 instance. So you can check it by using the command java minus minus version. Okay, so it shows that we have version 11.0.19 been installed on this particular EC2 machine. Next, we are going to install Jenkins. So for that, we are going to use the command sudo yum install jenkins minus y and hit enter. So once you hit enter, it will start installing Jenkins on our EC2 machine. Okay, so it says that the installation has been complete. And the next thing that we're going to look is enable the Jenkins service to start at boot. So for that, we are going to use this particular command sudo systemctl enable Jenkins. and you can hit enter. So this will enable Jenkins, and then we are going to start the Jenkins service on our EC2 instance. So for that, we are going to use the command sudo systemctl start Jenkins and hit enter. So this will start Jenkins on our EC2 instance. Okay, so it is starting the Jenkins. And if you want to know the status of your Jenkins, so there is another command which is sudo systemctl status Jenkins, which will give us the status of the Jenkins. Let's run that command. So if you run that command, you can see that it says that your Jenkins service has been enabled, and the current activity is that it is being activating. Okay, so it is still in process and it is being activating. So now let's access Jenkins server on port 8080. So for that, we need to check the public IP address. So you can copy the public IP address from your EC2 instance connect, and your port 8080 should be accessible from outside world. For that, you have to configure security group inbound rules. So you can go back to my other videos where I have given in detail how you can install Jenkins. You can go and check that video where I've given explanation on how to do the required configuration. So it says that in order to unlock Jenkins, we need to go on this path and we need to check the initial password. So let's go to this particular path and check for initial password. Otherwise, you can take the password from here also. So this is the password, but let's go to the path. And okay, so it says permission denied. So let's do sudo. Let's take the complete path from here. Okay, sorry. Okay, so we got the password over here. Copy this password. Okay. Otherwise, you can copy the password from here also. From when you did the sudo system CTL status Jenkins. So at that time also your password is visible, and you have to paste that password in administrator password, and you have to hit enter, and then you have to click on install suggested plugins. So this will start installing the required plugins, and this will result in your completion of your Jenkins stated. Then we will be setting up username and password once this is being done. So let it be installed all the Jenkins. So it is basically installing GitHub branch source pipeline, GitHub Groovy libraries, email extension, LDAP, Git pipelines, Gradle. So uh, all the all these plugins are being installed on your Jenkins server. So that is something which is going on currently. It doesn't take much time, so it should get installed really quick. Okay, so once our plugin is installed, it will ask you to create first admin user name and password. So you can keep anything. I'm keeping it for the time being test, and we'll click on save and continue. So it is just telling that you can access the Jenkins on this particular URL. So now your Jenkins setup is complete and ready. So it hardly took us 5 to 6 minutes in order to set up Jenkins. And so this is our Jenkins UI. This is how it looks. Next, we are going to configure our GitHub and Jenkins in such a way that whenever a developer makes the code changes or whenever commits the changes, it is being pulled by the Jenkins, and it is being built by the Jenkins. So that is what we are going to configure next. So now we have installed Jenkins and GitHub. The next thing that we're going to do is we want Jenkins to get our code from GitHub into our EC2 instance. So basically, we are going to connect our GitHub and Jenkins, and in such a way that GitHub will be able to access our project on EC2 instance also via SSH. So we are going to use a command line tool or a utility for generating the public private authentication keys for secure shell protocol, that is SSH protocol. So this tool, it basically SSH keygen, this utility, it generates a public key that is shared with the remote servers. So let's say we are going to share it with our GitHub repository or with the GitHub servers, and private key is stored in a local machine for authentication purposes. So let's generate the keys. So let's use this utility SSH keygen. So type SSH keygen and hit enter. So it will ask for a file in which you would like to save it. Keep entering enter even for the passphrase. So it will basically create the keys in your .ssh folder. It is showing over here, and it is going to create two keys. One is public key and another one is private key. So let's go and access this folder, uh, .ssh. So see, it has created two keys, id underscore rsa and id underscore rsa dot pub. So now we are going to open our GitHub, and we are going to use the public key. So basically we are going to give the public key to the GitHub repository. So let's see what is there in the public key. So this is your public key. It starts from SSH minus RSA. So let's go to the GitHub and give this public key. Now let's go to the GitHub account, and when once we are in GitHub, we will go to settings of our account, and in settings you will see SSH and GPG keys. Click on this option, and then you can click on new SSH in order to create a new SSH key. So you can give a title. Let's say we give a title Jenkins server to this SSH key, and it says that it begins with SSH minus RSA. So you can go to your instance and you can copy the key which we just saw just now. So you can copy this key and you can paste this public key over there. So we are going to paste this public key, and we are going to add SSH RSA. So it will ask for confirmation access. So you have to give that. I hope I remember the correct password. Okay, let me see. Okay, so we have saved this particular key over here, public key. So we have given this public key to our GitHub. Next, what we are going to do is we are going to configure our key in Jenkins. So go to your Jenkins server, and let's go to Jenkins UI. Let's log in with a credential which we gave on our first login. So we are here, we are logged in the UI of the Jenkins. So let's create a new project in our Jenkins. So let's say new item, let's call it Jenkins project. Let's call it the Django project we're going to use just now. Django project. Let's select freestyle project for the time being, and we'll click on OK. So it is actually creating the project for us. Next thing is over here you can give short description of the project, Django project, let's say. So this is going to be a GitHub project, that's right. So we are going to see the URL for our GitHub project. So let's see the GitHub project that we have. So this is the GitHub project that we're going to use today. So this is a hello world GitHub project. So we're going to put the URL over here. Next, we'll come to source code management. Again, we are going to select Git over here. Let's give the repository URL. Then in credentials, we are going to configure the credentials. Click on add button, click on Jenkins. So once you have clicked on Jenkins, you have to come over here. In this, there is an option of in the drop down which says SSH username with private key. So select this option. So once you select this option, it is going to ask you ID. So you can give anything as a ID. Let's say GitHub Jenkins, or let's say you give Django Jenkins as the ID. Okay, let's give the same thing as a description. Then for the username, you can go to your EC2 instance and you can check that who is your current user. So you can give this command, who am I. So you can see that EC2 dash user is the current user. So you can give the same over here, EC2 dash underscore dash user. And then for private key, it says enter directory and directly. So you can click on this option, enter directly, click on add. Now let's copy the private key from our EC2 instance. So let's read our private key. So this is the private key which we are going to give to Jenkins server. So let's copy the private key. It starts from begin open SSH private key. Let's copy it and let's go to our Jenkins and we'll paste this private key which we had just now. We copied it from our EC2 instance and we pasted it in our Jenkins so that it could establish a connection between Jenkins and GitHub. And then we are going to click on add. So once you have clicked on add, over here in the drop down you will see the username and the type of credentials that you just created. So select those credentials, and in the branch let it be master branch because we are going to use the master branch of our GitHub project. And then we are going to say one step further is using GitHub hook, which we'll be looking in the next step. So let's click on save, apply, and let's click on save button. Okay, so we have clicked on save button. Let's click on build now and let's see what happens. We have given the connection of repository from our GitHub to Jenkins and Jenkins to GitHub. They should ideally be able to talk to each other. So let's see what happened in the console output. Our build success was there. So this is something that happened. So that means it has done something. So basically what it is doing is it is building workspace. So it got your code from GitHub into this particular project. So let's go to this particular link on our EC2 instance and see that whether it has got the code or not. So you can see that in the logs it says that cloning the remote git repository. So we have given this git repository URL. It has started cloning it. And where is it cloning it? It is actually cloning it in this particular URL. Sorry, on this particular path. So we are going to check it on our EC2 instance. So basically it has built and it has got the code in our local. So that is what it has done till now. So let's go to this particular path and see if we have got the project in our EC2 instance or not. So let's go to this particular path. Okay, so looks like we have got the project. So we have got the project and all the files on our EC2 instance by instantiating a build on your on our Jenkins. So that is what has happened just now. And now we'll go next one step further and we'll ask Jenkins itself to build our project by using the Docker file that we have given over here. So we'll be giving the commands, Docker commands to the Jenkins. Jenkins will be building our Docker container and then it will be starting our project. It will also be deploying our project and will be able to access the project via that container. So let's see how you can configure that part of the Jenkins. So now let's quickly install Docker on our EC2 instance. So we'll use this command sudo yum install docker minus y. Okay, and if you want to refer like from where are we getting these commands, so I have also mentioned earlier that you can go to my repository. So you can go to this GitHub repository of mine, and in this repository I have AWS projects. You can refer to the AWS projects. In this I have given all the different installation steps. So let's say if we go to install Docker on Amazon EC2 Linux machines, so for that I have given complete steps what you can follow. Okay, so you can follow these steps. So the next step will be we are going to start the service. So let's start the service, sudo service docker start, and hit enter. So it will actually start the service. And if you want to check that whether your docker has been installed successfully or not, you can use the command docker minus minus version. Okay, so you can use that command also. So this says that a docker has been installed successfully and the version that is being installed is 20.10.17. Okay, so now let's go back to our Jenkins and let's go to our project that we created. Let's go to configure and we are going to in configure we are going to add build steps, and in build steps from the drop down select execute shell Okay, and in the execute shell, we are going to add the commands that are being needed in order to run your Docker image and in order to build your Docker image and then run your container. So that these steps can be followed by Jenkins while Jenkins is building our project. So the first thing that we can do is we are going to use Docker build dot minus t. So I have discussed all these commands in my previous videos where I have explained these commands in detail. Django app, let's say. And the next command that we are going to give is the docker run command, which is docker run. Let me just copy the command to make it little fast. Docker run minus t. So this is the name of the container. So let's call it Django container. And this is the port mapping that I'm giving over here. And let's call it Django app. Okay. Okay, so let's see what is the port mapping that is done in our Docker file. So let's see, let's open our Docker file quickly. Okay, so you can see that the port that is being mapped over here in this Docker file is our 8002 port. Okay, so 8002 is something that is mapped over here. So let's keep the port as 8002 here as well in our mapping on Jenkins. Okay, so and the name of the app is Django app itself, and the Django container is something that will be created when this particular these two commands are being executed. These two shell scripts are executed. Let's save. Okay, and let's build now. Okay, it should fail because we have not yet given the rights in order to access those permission denied. So that is the issue that came up. So one thing that you can do is uh, got permission denied while trying to connect to docker daemon socket. So that is the error which you can check on your console. So one thing you can do is either you can go to your EC2 instance and you have to give one more command which will allow docker user to be accessed by Jenkins. So let's give this command. So this command is sudo usermod -a -g docker Jenkins, and you will hit enter over here. Okay, so basically we have given the permissions. So once we have given these permissions, and also in our scripts that we mentioned here, what we can do is quickly configure these scripts, and let's give sudo to it. Let's give administrative privileges when these scripts are being executed so that we don't get the same issue again. And then we are going to save it. Okay, so once we have saved it, now what we have to do is we have to restart our Jenkins in order to show the changes. So we need to restart our Jenkins. So we are going to use the command now, sudo systemctl restart Jenkins. Okay, so this should restart our Jenkins once again. So let's hit enter over here. So it should say that Jenkins is getting ready to work. So it is basically restarting our Jenkins in order to make these permission changes take effect, and then we are going to build our application. Okay, so we learn from our mistakes, whatever mistakes we do. So what I did just now was I again went to configure, and I simply went to our execute shell, and I removed the sudo that we gave here. Let's see now the project if it builds properly or not. We'll click on build now once again, and we'll see that it will build the project or not. So it is actually building the project. Hmm, let's see the output. I have removed that sudo keyword. I think that is not needed since you have already given the permissions over here using the command that we used. So that is the reason it was giving that issue earlier. So it is still building the project. Pulling, and then it is running the Django. It is actually running our Docker file. You will see it is building the Docker file, Docker image for us. and so all these layers or all these steps are happening. This is what we saw in our previous step when we dockerized our Django application. So we did it manually. In our previous video you can see that we did it manually, but in this is being automated. This is being done by Jenkins once we clicked on build now. So our output is success, so our build is successful, as you can see over here. So build is success, build number 4 is success, so we should be able to access our application. So let's go and access our application on port 8002 on which it is being hosted. So okay, so you can see that our build has been successfully done and we have hosted our Dockerized container application, Django application over here. So this part has been done. So now the only part that is being remaining is which needs to be automated is, so basically you have implemented continuous integration over here. The only part that remains which needs to be automated is, so whenever the software developer makes changes to the GitHub repository, so in that scenario the build should be automatically triggered by Jenkins itself, and Jenkins should run all the necessary test cases or whatever build steps are being mentioned by the team or the DevOps team. So that is what that needs to be done. So we have to now configure our Jenkins and GitHub in such a way that whenever a change takes place in our Jenkins repository, sorry, in our GitHub repository, Jenkins triggers the build on the Jenkins server and it deploys the application and it follows all the build steps that are being mentioned in the deployment of the application. So let's get into that. So that for that we are going to use something that is known as webhooks. So let's look into what is webhooks. Okay, so now what we are going to do is we are going to install a plugin on our Jenkins. So we'll go to our dashboard, we'll go to manage Jenkins, and once we are in manage Jenkins, we'll go to manage plugins, and over here we are going to search the plugins in available plugins, GitHub integration. Okay, so that is a plugin that we are looking for, GitHub, in order to do our webhooks part. So this is the plugin. Click on this plugin and we are going to use this option, install without restart. Click on this button, install without restart. It will start installing the GitHub integration plugin. So once this part is being done, what we're going to do is we are going to configure the webhook on our GitHub. So whatever things we are going to do in Jenkins, we are also going to do a part of it on our GitHub also, so that both the Jenkins and GitHub can talk to each other. Let's say it that way. So let's go to our GitHub, and on GitHub go to your project which you are trying to set up for building automatically with the Jenkins server. Click on settings. Once you are on settings, let's click on webhooks. Okay, so we are going to paste the URL. So this is your Jenkins URL that we will paste. Another thing that we are going to add to is it is GitHub webhook. So that is something we are going to add to it. Okay, and we have just the push event selected over here, and we will click on add webhook. So this will add the webhook to our GitHub settings page, on the settings page for that particular project. So this is going to happen. So we are waiting for a green tick over here in order to make sure that the connection has been established and it has validated that we are on the correct, we have linked to the correct Jenkins repository with the help of this URL. So you can take the URL from here, for your Jenkins repository URL slash, and add GitHub slash webhook to it. So it might take a minute or two to show a green tick over here. Okay, so you can see this green tick is over here. So that means that it has actually configured and it has made sure that our ping was successful and it is able to establish the connection with the server details that we have given over here. Okay, so now let's go back to our Jenkins. Let's go back to dashboard. And once we are on Jenkins, we are on our dashboard. We'll go back to our Jenkins job and configure build triggers. So we'll go back to our job. Um Okay, so this is our job. Let's click on it. Let's click on configure once again. Now let's go to the section where it says build triggers. Okay, and over here we are going to select GitHub hook trigger for git scm polling. So we are going to select this particular uh, box, and once we have done that, we are going to click on apply. We are going to click on save. Okay, so currently our Django container is already running, and we need to stop that Django container, and then we have to again make changes to our GitHub so that Jenkins can again build a project. So let's see what is going on. Sudo docker ps. So this is the container that is running. So let's kill this container. Okay, sudo docker kill. Let's give the container id b29. Okay, so this will actually kill our container. Now let's again do a sudo docker ps minus a. So it says that it has exited. The status is exited for this particular container. Also, let's remove this particular container. Sudo docker rm. Let's remove this particular container itself, b29. Okay, so it has actually removed the container. So once you do a sudo docker ps minus a, so that container does not exist. Let's see what is the thing with the images. So let's see, do sudo docker images. So this will give a list of images that has been built till now. So you can see that we have the image Django app has also been built. So let's remove this image as well, and we'll see that everything will be built from starting by our Jenkins server. So sudo docker rmi, let's give the image id over here. Okay, so it has actually deleted the image also for us. So everything is being done. Okay, so we are not going to get any duplicacy error or something. Okay, so we have set our Jenkins. So let make some changes in our Django project, and then that changes will be reflected in our application. Okay, so let's go to my app. Let's go to views.py. Let's edit views.py. Let's say hello everyone. Okay, and then we are going to commit these changes. Okay, so we have committed these changes, so it should ideally trigger a build. So let's go to our Django project. So you can see that it has actually triggered a build. We made the changes. As soon as we made the changes, it has triggered the build number 5, and that is actually going on. So we have actually integrated our Jenkins, GitHub, and our Docker and everything. So this is actually the automation of the continuous integration which we have done. So whenever a developer will check in the code, whenever the developer will push the code, Jenkins will come to know that something has happened on the GitHub repository. It will automatically build, it will automatically take the latest code, it will build the code, and it will actually deploy the code depending on the steps or the build strategy that you have given to your Jenkins server. So it has actually successfully built our application, and it has followed all those steps. It has done the dockerization of our application as well, and finally it is saying that successfully it has tagged also our container image, and it has done everything. So it should ideally be running over here. So let's hit an enter. So you can see that the changes are being reflected over here. Now it says hello everyone. So we have successfully done this particular project. You can look into the other videos also in this particular series. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more such interesting and informative videos. Thank you. Bye bye.